Hey there. You most likely didn't know how I look because my channel literally quintupled in size since I did my Savage guides, and I did them without my face cam in them. So hey, I'm the guy who ruined your party finder with the P1S tank damage down strat. So I did a community poll on YouTube, and I asked you guys out there, what fight of the new Savage tier you liked the most and why? Okay, so here's the post I made 2 weeks ago. What was your favorite fight of the Pandaemonium Savage raid so far and why? Good/funny comments might get featured in a video about the tier I'm working on. So that's that. The majority of people, almost 50%, voted for P2S as the best fight of the tier. Taking into consideration that that was 2 weeks ago and people might have not cleared the whole tier, I guess it was a bit early to do that poll, but I think it's very understandable that people enjoy that fight. Then we have Jones Soul saying, P2S if no other reason than the usage of the arena is creative and unique. The generic circular or square arena is pretty old, so fights that utilize unique arena mechanics are always appreciated. Bonus points for removing the positionals. So that's like basically what Xenos was saying, that the arena usage is pretty cool and what a lot of people enjoyed because it's something fresh and something new. Even the positional thing, that's exactly what Xenos said as well, and this guy commented that 2 weeks ago. That's pretty weird. P1S has just nothing going on. P3S is too much visual gore. P4S phase 1 is ruined by being a door boss that gives no loot. And the hardest mechanic in P4 phase 2 is counting to 8. Hippo for the win. So he's not completely wrong. P1S just got nothing going on. That's true. P1S is pretty boring after you cleared it once. P3S is too much visual gore. I think that's not what P3S's problem is. I get what he's saying, and I think P3S has a huge problem with using too much of the same colors on the same colored floor, and you just get like your eyes, you feel them getting burned red. P4 phase 1 is ruined by being a door boss that gives no loot. I think that is not correct. I don't think they should change that. Like, maybe they should, but on the other hand, should they really? Maybe you could do that door boss 1 gives you 1 chest, and then the second boss gives you another chest, but I don't know how that would work out. I think it's good that they stuck to how they usually do it, and the hardest mechanic in P4 phase is counting to 8. That's actually pretty hard. Like, I was calling that for my raid, and counting out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for all the players, and by doing that, I just always forgot my own number. Like, it's so hard to remember your own number. It's like if you try to remember a number, think of a random number right now. Think of the number, like a random number, whatever number. And I'm just right here saying 31, 4, 81, 9, 71, 96, 3,455, 9,467, 333,041, and 22 cents. What number were you thinking of before I started rambling on numbers? Like, it's pretty hard to remember. I know it's exaggerating, but like, that's pretty hard. I'd say third, but after experiencing 400 wipes, I'll go with 1, due to the fact that getting a reclear only took 20 minutes. I understand where they're coming from, because not everyone blind procs the fights, and they just want to read a guide, get in, and get out. If you get hard stuck on a boss on a reclears and you don't have that much time, it gets really frustrating. So in this poll, you have to take into consideration that most people won't talk out of experience of prog, but fun and reclears and farm and stuff. And they won't be like, how fun was it to prog? It's like, what's the best fight? And that the best fight is not what was most fun to prog always. P2, since I like the mechanics and scenery, it just reminds me so much of Dark Souls. What the fuck? I wanted to say third because I like the mechanics, but PFing it has been an absolute nightmare, so I hate the fight now. That's exactly what I was saying. We call it P3SD, man. It's just P3SD. I love P2S so much that I've done 100 pulls this week. Love? Hate? What's the meaning of life? Rala, grant me the sweet release of death. Why haven't I liked that comment, man? Second guessing which way is right or left during Cinderwing, I almost added post-it notes to each side of my screen. That's so relatable. I think E10S was the pinnacle of that. Like, the brain telling you to be somewhere where you don't actually have to be. I think E10S was the pinnacle of doing that. P1S because I don't feel the urge to scoop out my eyeballs whenever I want to get a PF group. I don't think P1S was that good of a first fight, but it wasn't that bad of a first fight either. I think compared to all of Shadowbringer's first fights, this one really pales in comparison because it didn't have anything going for it. It had Intemperance, which was lame. It had Pizza Slice Face, which was pretty lame. The only cool thing about the fight was the chains mechanic, because it was like aesthetically fitting very well, because like he whips around chains and shit, and all around you are like chains and stuff. So it really fit aesthetically into that fight, and it was a fun mechanic to do and figure out for like 10 minutes. I think Intemperance should be way more punishing in how it works out. I heard Xenos talk about the same thing in his video, where he was like, yo, that shit should just straight up kill you. And I agree with him, because this is Savage. This is now big boy territory. And you have to get the feeling of, yo, when I mess up, people die. And he did a good comparison to like E5S, Ramu, where when you not stand in position to break your rod, you wipe the whole raid. And that's like just how it is. I think every first turn should have something like that, where you get the sense of, oh shit, if I mess up, people will die. And I don't think getting a damage down on one person or the whole raid is a good thing of doing that. If you saw how like DPS, like the guild who won Race to World First in this tier, did this mechanic, they just tanked Limit Break and took 8 damage downs because they just didn't care. That shouldn't be like a thing that's possible. But it is possible because the fight does not have a damage check and the mechanic isn't punishing at all. And I didn't like that specifically. P2S, on the other hand, is like one of the, if not the best second turn compared to the ones in the last expansion. I would rate it S tier just because of its uniqueness. It is way better than Shadow Doggy, like E10S. It's way better than Gouda Ifrit, and it's like, now that I think about it, it's pretty similar to E2S. Like, you have a unique shaped platform, you have clear visual tells on mechanics, and you get what you have to do. It's not like they present you the solution on a silver platter, but once it happens and it fails, you're like, oh, of course, it should work that way. And that's pretty cool. I like the way they used the stage. I liked coherence as a reoccurring thing throughout the fight, because it's like a little bit healing intensive, because I procced everything as a healer, as a sage, and I mostly talk out of healer's perspective. And in P1S, like coming back to P1S, there's nothing that does damage, like nothing. First Intemperance, where he Warden's Wrath, what's the AoE called, where he does that a couple times, just plays a Lilybell or a Panheimer in the middle and nobody takes damage, and after that nothing does damage. You just dodge everything. It's pretty snooze fest for healers. The same thing kind of applies to P2S, and I could like easily solo heal that fight. I did like in week 2 or week 3, I did like a solo healer run of this fight. So there's nothing going on in short amounts of time. But I think coherence is one of the things where it's like, oh shit, that's pretty tight if you're not on point. One thing that would have been amazing, on every sewage cast where he like lets the water into the stage lifts up a little bit, and then the second sewage, the stage lifts up even more, and then even more, and the enrage would be like another sewage which like presses the raid against the ceiling and just squishes you to enrage. That would have been like really fun, but I don't know how applicable that idea is. I just think about it every time I look left and right on this fight. They're like waterfalls coming into the stage, and I'm like, this should kinda lift the stage up a little bit, but let's not get hung up on that too much. P3S is a little different to judge, because there are other factors that ruin the fight a little bit. I think progging it was hella fun. I think people developing strats still that improve the fight is really a really fun thing. A lot of people complain that it's like kind of an homage to an old fight and they reuse a lot of mechanics, but I never got that bad vibe myself, because it's like if someone brings out a piece of music and they sampled a song that I like, I'm not going to be salty and say like, oh, I know that fight from back in the day. It's like, oh shit, yeah, I love that song. Like, yeah, reuse it, make something new cool out of it. So I was not opposed to that approach at all. I have a different opinion on that part, but in Party Finder there seemed to be a lot of people getting stuck on that fight, and I like that P3 is an actual wall for Party Finder. I like that idea. They wanted to do that last year with E11S. Yoshi P said that the third fight would be kind of a wall, but then E11S was like a joke, and it was not a wall at all. So I think they just went a little ham on that fight, where it's a literal PF killer. I've been logging a lot with the group lately, And we call that fight P3SD because we wipe a lot when you greed on that fight. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's not bad that they reused and redone mechanics in better ways or different ways. I don't mind that at all. I like Fountain of Fire. I like the tornado shit. I like that people developed Elmo strat with the tornado shit, which is like actual 5-head. Like, I love that. I love when there's a mechanic that you look at it and you see it has to be played a certain way, but then people come up with a different way of playing it, which is actually 10 times better. I love that. If doing a mechanic a little outside the box and get a punishment for it, which is not that devastating, or no punishment at all, if you just think outside the box, that does not mean you do the mechanic wrong. So doing Elmo is not doing the mechanic wrong. It's just doing it very innovative and in a very cool way. And I don't think you should get punished for that. Or if you get punished for that, just wipe everything. I would say it's like on par with Leviathan, but the other two are like, Phoenix is way better than E11 and E7. So P4S Part 1. Like, initially I really liked the fight. I liked the idea of role-based mechanics and remembering stuff in a weird way. It's kind of similar to like Shadowkeeper, where he like trolls you what's left and right, what's up and down. So you have to remember, oh, this person got hit with this, so we do the other thing, and then we got hit with that, and they do the other thing after that. So it's a little bit weird and brain messy, but once you get a hang of it, it's not as hard anymore. Then you have Pinex, which is, I think, Party Finder memes more on it than anything else. It's not that hard of a mechanic. You have orbs that you can just cheese because they're weirdly coded. Like, the way I did them in my guide is how I think they wanted it to work, but in reality they don't work like that and they're super cheesable. Then you have towers, which are snooze fest, and Tether Rod again, and another Pinex, 1-to-1 copied, and then Enrage. So in week 1, when we tried to kill that boss, it had a really tight timer, Enrage timer. So we had deathless runs where he didn't die. It was really special because no other of the 3 bosses ever enraged on us in prog. So we were like, okay, we need damage and we have to squeeze it out of nowhere. But now that like week 2, week 3, week 4 have passed and people have enough books to buy gear, the damage check isn't like as present anymore. So there's nothing really exciting still going on. Pinex is like 1-to-1 copied in the fight. Orbs are cheesable. And Bloodrake is like the only fun thing at first, but once you get a hang of it, it's pretty easy as well. So in long term, I don't think this is like a cool part 1 fight. The only thing that makes it like a good last turn is that it's a door boss, and it's not all of it. Compare this to like, what was it called in E12S? Like not the Oracle of Darkness, the one before him. I don't know what it was called. But that was mechanical overload, not reusing a single thing, and so compared to that, I think it really pales. Yeah, I think part 2 was a little bit better. It was much more puzzle oriented than execution oriented, which part 1 was. Part 2 is not as hard on execution, but hard as like figure out what the f is going on. That's why I think people won't enjoy that fight a lot in the future. It's not really hard on execution. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think people had a lot of fun progging on it, but reclearing it is like a little bit boring. We recently did some log runs on that, and there's already like a cheese strat for Curtain Call, where you like tank LB and just pop tethers left and right without like looking at timers. You just tank LB and pop tethers, and there's like a lot of damage coming in, but after that you have like nothing going on anymore. So that's like pretty cool and unique and a different way of approaching it. If you have like a stacked party and everyone is best in slot, it can even die after first Curtain Call, or even maybe in mid first Curtain Call. So E4S Part 2 was fun to prog, fun to figure out. Most likely it will not be one of the favorite fights remembered. And it's just like Oracle of Darkness, where if you look up a guide, like I did the same thing. I don't say that it's a bad thing, but when Oracle of Darkness came out and I looked up a guide, I was like, that's like not that difficult compared to part 1, which is very execution based, execution heavy. I was like, Oracle of Darkness doesn't seem as bad as P1 because there's a puzzle going on, and if someone shows you the puzzle, it's actually like you only have to move your character. And I think that's why people won't enjoy re-clearing that fight over and over again. So yeah, that's my thought on the current raid tier. I'm really looking forward to do more guides, like when new extremes come out, when the second raid tier drops. I do videos like this every Friday and call them Final Fantasy Friday, so if you don't want to miss them, make sure to subscribe to the channel or pray for the YouTube algorithm that it shows them to you. Please don't do that. I hope throughout the last couple of weeks I could help you clear a couple of turns in the tier, and I will continue doing guides for future content like the next Savage tier or extremes that come out. And next week when Lost Ark gets released, I will stream a lot of Lost Ark and do maybe a couple of guides over there. If you're interested in that MMO content, that will be on that channel as well. So thank you very much for watching and have fun raiding.